I used to think I had the most solid marriage anyone could hope for. When I met Sarah, everything in my life clicked into place, her laughter, her warmth, even her small quirks. She had an easy smile that lit up every room, and there was a gentleness about her that drew me in from day one. We'd spend hours talking about everything, how we both got through difficult childhood moments, our dreams of someday owning a lake cabin, our favorite books, and even the silly idea of adopting a handful of dogs to fill the house with love. Our connection felt effortless, built on a foundation of trust and open conversation. Never once did I doubt her love for me, or mine for her. We married after 2 years of dating, with a modest ceremony in her parents' backyard. Sarah's father was a retired landscaper with a knack for making anything bloom, and the yard was overflowing with roses and hydrangeas for the occasion. It was a warm, sunny afternoon, the sky a perfect blue that seemed to bless our union. When I slipped the ring on her finger, my hands shook, tears burning behind my eyes because I couldn't believe I was lucky enough to find a woman who understood and cherished me the way she did. She had tears in her eyes too, whispering she'd never felt so sure about anything. My heart soared. Our first year of marriage was everything I hoped it would be. We moved into a snug 2-bedroom house on a quiet street. Every corner of our new place echoed with promise. We painted the walls together, teased each other over color choices, and agreed we'd do everything we could to grow our life into a story worth telling. We were both working stable, if not extraordinary, jobs. She was in social work, always caring for others, and I was an IT technician for a small firm. Our combined income wasn't high, but we made ends meet, never lacking the small joys that brought us closer. We traveled a bit, took weekend trips to the coast, visited craft fairs, and cherished each little tradition we created, from making pancakes on Sunday mornings to picking a new board game every month. Sarah was the kind of person who wore her emotions on her sleeve in the sweetest way. If she was upset, she'd say so. If she was overjoyed, you'd see it instantly in her shining eyes. That openness was one of the qualities I admired most. So when she began to grow quieter in our second year, I noticed. I chalked it up to stress. Her job was emotionally demanding, often requiring her to deal with families in crisis. She would come home worn out sometimes, needing time to decompress. I tried to give her space, offering comfort without pushing. She'd nod, give me a small, grateful smile, and say she'd be fine after a hot shower and a cup of tea. Eventually, life got busier for both of us. My IT firm took on more clients, pushing me to work late. Sarah had a new case load that seemed heavier than usual. We started missing those simple rituals. Fewer leisurely breakfasts together, more rushing out the door in the morning with half-eaten toast in hand. Still, we maintained a sense of partnership, or so I believed, because even though we had less free time, we were in it together. I was proud of us for juggling life's demands. It was about 6 months ago that I picked up on the first real sign something was off. Sarah would get calls late at night, usually around 11 or midnight, which was unusual. She'd glance at the phone, her eyes flicking with a tension I'd never seen before, then she'd step out of the room to answer. Sometimes I'd hear her muffled voice from the hallway, but I couldn't make out the words. If I ever asked who it was, she'd brush me off with a vague mention of a coworker or a friend in crisis. She'd emphasize how social work emergencies didn't follow a 9-to-5 schedule. I believed her, why wouldn't I? Her job was indeed unpredictable, and I knew families in crisis might need help at odd hours. But over time, these calls became more frequent, and her explanations more brittle. She started locking her phone, a new habit. If I sat next to her on the couch and she got a text, she'd angle the screen away. I told myself it might be confidentiality issues, she had to protect the family's privacy. And yet, something about the hush that fell over her whenever her phone buzzed set my nerves on edge. Still, she remained kind and affectionate in the ways that mattered. We'd chat over dinner when we could, we'd still share intimate moments that felt genuine. So I swallowed my suspicions. unwilling to let paranoia disrupt the marriage we'd built. Then came the night that changed everything. I remember it vividly. It was a rainy Saturday in early spring, the sound of droplets tapping on our windows. Sarah had been restless all day, pacing around the house. She said she felt cooped up. I offered a movie or a board game, but she kept glancing at her phone, waiting. By 9, she mumbled something about being tired and headed upstairs. I stayed in the living room, half watching a baseball game, half wondering if I should check on her. An hour passed. Then another. Eventually, I decided to go to bed too, though I wasn't tired. A sense of unease clung to me. I climbed the stairs softly, the house quiet except for the gentle patter of rain. Our bedroom door was half closed, and through that sliver of space, I saw the light on. Sarah stood by the window, phone to her ear, speaking in a hushed tone. I froze. She seemed tense, her free hand clutched in a fist at her side. I had no intention of eavesdropping, but the moment she spoke, something in her voice held me there, too worried to announce my presence. Her words were quiet, but the anguish in them was unmistakable. "I can't keep doing this," she said, her voice trembling. "He's a good man, and God, I hate that I'm lying to him. I feel sick every time he looks at me like he trusts me completely." My heart pounded. She was talking about me. Why would she feel sick about lying to me? Who was on the other end of that call? She paused, listening to whoever spoke, then continued, tears in her tone, "I know we said it was just one time, but it's not something I can brush aside anymore. I can't pretend it never happened when every day, it's eating me alive. I feel like a monster, but her voice broke. I also can't let him find out. It would destroy him." A wave of cold washed over me. My thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. There had been a betrayal. She'd hidden something from me, something so large that it caused her guilt every waking moment. My breath caught in my throat. The only thing that made sense was an affair, or at least something heartbreakingly close to it. My mind replayed the last few months, the late calls, her guarded posture, the changes in her demeanor. All of it pointed to one terrifying possibility. I took a step back, unsteady, feeling like the floor had disappeared under my feet. She was crying softly now, whispering into the phone. "I don't know what to do. I can't leave him, I love him, I do, but I can't forget what happened between us either." Another pause. Then she said, "No, he has no idea. I've been careful. If he found out, he'd never forgive me." My entire body felt numb. She had done something that would tear us apart if I ever learned the truth. Except I'd just learned it. My mind flicked to confrontation, to bursting in and demanding to know who she was talking to. But something held me back, a mixture of fear and heartbreak. I listened further, though guilt stabbed me for eavesdropping. Yet how could I not? She was my wife, the person I trusted most, and everything was unraveling before my eyes. She ended the call abruptly, stifling a sob. I heard her phone clatter onto the bedside table. For a moment, I stood there, paralyzed, uncertain if I should pretend I hadn't heard. Then the door creaked slightly, and she glanced my way. Our eyes locked across the distance. I saw panic flood her expression. How long have you been standing there?" she whispered, wiping at her tears. My mouth felt dry. I mumbled something about just arriving. I couldn't muster the strength to admit I'd overheard enough to confirm my worst fear. She was lying to me, and it was tearing her apart. She forced a shaky smile, clearing her throat. "Are you okay? You look pale." I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm fine. Just wanted to check on you. You left so suddenly." She hesitated, her gaze darting to the phone on the table. I got a call from a client, a crisis situation. I'm sorry if I woke you. She lied so smoothly, or maybe not smoothly, her voice quavered, and guilt was etched across her face. Part of me wanted to confront her then and there, to demand she tell me the truth. But something else in me whispered to wait, to gather clarity instead of confronting her blindly. It's okay, I lied back, forcing a calm I didn't feel. I just wanted to be sure you were all right. She nodded, biting her lower lip. Yeah, I'm just tired. I think I'll go to bed now. I nodded too, not trusting myself to speak more. We turned off the lights and slipped under the covers in silence. She kept her back to me, shoulders trembling slightly. I stared at the dark ceiling, my mind churning with 1,000 questions, none of which I had answers to. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice on that call, the raw torment in it. If she was so tormented, maybe she still cared about us, about me. But she had crossed a line, possibly an affair. I was left uncertain, furious, and devastated all at once. The next day was a haze. I rose before she did, leaving the house early with a vague excuse about some urgent work matter. In truth, I just couldn't face her. My heart was pounding so loudly, I thought I might break down if I tried to make small talk. At the office, I distracted myself with tasks, but my brain kept wandering back to that call. Could it have been a single mistake, or was it ongoing? With whom? For how long? And how was I supposed to handle it? By afternoon, I found myself shaking, my stomach churning with dread. I contemplated talking to a friend, maybe confiding in someone, but shame held me back. Our marriage had seemed so perfect, how could I admit it might be a lie? Then I realized that not confronting her was slowly eating me alive. Even if I wasn't prepared for the answers, I had to know the truth. So I decided I'd go home that evening, try to remain calm, and ask her, point blank, about what I overheard. When I arrived home, the house was quiet. Sarah's car was in the driveway, but she wasn't in the living room or kitchen. I found her upstairs in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone. She looked up when I entered, her face pale, eyes rimmed with red as if she'd been crying. "Hey," she said softly, setting the phone aside. I closed the door behind me. My pulse thrummed in my ears. "Sarah," I began, "I need to talk to you about last night." She swallowed, nodding slowly. I figured. I sat in the chair by the dresser, not trusting myself to be too close to her just yet. "I heard some of your call," I said, voice tight. "You said you've been lying to me. You said you can't keep doing it." I felt my throat close up. "Please, just tell me the truth." She pressed her lips together, tears welling in her eyes. For a moment, I hoped she'd confess everything. Instead, she faltered, looking away. "It's complicated," she whispered. "I don't know how to." "Please," I cut in, my voice trembling with both anger and desperation. "I know you're hiding something huge. If you love me at all, just tell me what's going on." She took a shaky breath, then her composure cracked. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders heaving with sobs. I fought the urge to go to her, to comfort her. It felt contradictory to want to hold her and also to keep my distance, but the betrayal burned too hot. After a few moments, she looked up, wiping tears. "I'm so sorry," she said, voice a jagged whisper. "I never wanted to hurt you." A heavy silence weighed between us. My heart hammered. "Then why?" I asked, not even sure which question I was asking first. "Why lie? Why cheat? Why break us?" Sarah's face contorted with guilt. She inhaled, about to speak, but the words didn't come. Instead, she tried again. "It started about 6 months ago. A coworker, James, he and I were working on this big case, and we spent a lot of time together. Late nights, intense situations. One night, we ended up crossing a line. She paused, face twisting with shame. We were both so tired, emotionally raw, and one thing led to another. My stomach lurched. An affair. The words hammered in my mind. Part of me had suspected, but hearing it confirmed was a punch to the gut. My voice came out colder than I expected. So you slept with him? She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. It was just that once, she insisted, voice trembling. Afterwards, we swore we'd never do it again. We felt horrible, and we agreed to keep it secret, to pretend it never happened. But it didn't just vanish. We still had to work together, still got close, still confided in each other in ways we shouldn't. We never slept together again, but the emotional bond, it lingered. And I felt guilty every single day. I clenched my fists, trying to process. So that's what all the late-night calls were about. You were talking to him? She shook her head. Not always. But yes, sometimes. Other times it was my friend from another department who knew about it, who tried to help me figure out what to do. I was panicking. I couldn't bear the thought of telling you, but I hated lying to you too. Pain radiated through my chest. So you just kept me in the dark, letting me love you while you carried this secret? Her face crumpled again. Yes. I'm so sorry. I know I should have come clean right away, or never done it in the first place, or something. But I was so afraid of losing you. That fear just kept me paralyzed. I stared at her, anger warring with heartbreak. Do you love him? She shook her head fiercely. No. It was a mistake. A moment of weakness that spiraled into months of lies. I care about him as a friend, but love? No, never. I love you. Always you. A bitter laugh escaped me. You have a strange way of showing it, Sarah. She didn't respond, eyes downcast, tears dripping. The sight of her crying filled me with conflicting urges. Part of me wanted to reach out and hold her, but another part wanted to shout at her for what she'd done. We sat in silence for a long while, the weight of her confession pressing down on us like a physical force. Eventually, I spoke, my voice hollow. So what happens now? She inhaled sharply. I don't know. I don't want to lose you. I'll do anything to make this right. Her gaze rose to meet mine. I'm willing to quit my job, cut off all contact with James, go to counseling, whatever it takes. I closed my eyes, exhaustion mingling with sorrow. It's not that simple, I said quietly. You broke my trust. I don't even know if I can look at you the same way. Every time I picture you with him, my voice quivered. It hurts in a way I can't describe. She nodded, wiping her cheeks. I know. You have every right to hate me. I hate myself for it. For the next hour, we talked, or rather, we tried to. She told me how she'd felt isolated at work, how she had problems at the agency that she didn't want to burden me with. She said it was no excuse for what she did, but that it was the emotional backdrop. I listened, numb. Part of me recognized that we all have vulnerabilities, moments when we make terrible choices. Another part of me was too raw to empathize with her reasons. The betrayal overshadowed everything. Eventually, she reached out, gently placing a hand on my arm. I flinched at first, then allowed it, though I couldn't meet her gaze. I want to fix this, she whispered. I know it might not be possible, but I have to try. I can't imagine life without you. I pulled away, standing up from the chair. I need time, I said, voice tight. I don't know if I can forgive you or if I even want to try. Right now, I just need space to think. She nodded, tears spilling anew, but didn't stop me as I left the room. That night, I slept on the couch. Well, I lay there, staring at the ceiling while the clock ticked. My heart felt like it was beating in slow motion, each thud echoing with betrayal. Memories of our happy moments flooded my mind, our wedding, our first dance, the silly nights we laughed ourselves breathless. Now, they felt tainted by her confession. I realized that I had two choices, either try to salvage what we had or walk away, shattered. Neither option seemed easy. I also remembered her phone call, the raw anguish in her voice. She had dreaded me discovering the truth, but it wasn't as though she was gallivanting around with no remorse. Did that matter enough? In the morning, I avoided her. I showered quickly, threw on clothes, and left before she woke. I spent the entire day at a cafe, laptop open, staring blankly at the screen, unable to focus on anything but the turmoil in my head. My phone buzzed with messages from her. Are you okay? Where are you? Please come home, we need to talk. I ignored them, still too raw. By afternoon, my sister called, worried about me. I hadn't told her about the situation yet, but I guess my abrupt disappearance from daily routines raised alarms. I wanted to confide in someone, but the shame of admitting my wife cheated still weighed heavily. Eventually, I told my sister I was just dealing with some personal issues, that I was safe but needed time. She sounded concerned, but she respected my need for space. As the day wore on, I felt a gnawing emptiness. My mind wandered to the specifics. Had she kissed him the way she kissed me? Had she whispered to him the same sweet words she used with me? The jealousy and hurt were suffocating. Late in the evening, I drove aimlessly around town, the city lights blurring past, until I realized I was physically and mentally exhausted. I needed rest, but going home felt like walking into a battlefield of heartbreak. Still, I had nowhere else to go. When I finally pulled into the driveway, the house was dark except for a single lamp in the living room. I entered quietly. Sarah was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, eyes red from crying. She rose the moment she saw me, a flicker of relief on her face. "You came back," she said softly, voice trembling. I nodded, avoiding her gaze. I didn't know where else to go. She stepped closer, but not too close. "I'm so sorry," she repeated, fresh tears glistening. "I'll do anything. Please don't shut me out." I wanted to fling her apology back in her face, but the exhaustion was too deep. Instead, I sighed. "Sarah, I'm not shutting you out. I need time to figure out if I can handle this. We might need counseling, or maybe some form of separation while I process." Her expression crumpled at the word separation, but she nodded. "Okay," she said, voice breaking. "I'll respect whatever you decide. Just, let me show you how serious I am about fixing this. I'll tell my boss I need to be reassigned or I'll quit. I can't keep working with James, that's clear. I want to prove to you that I'm done with him." A flicker of something, hope, maybe, stirred in me. She was willing to make changes, big ones. But I couldn't just let that be enough. "Even if you do," I said, "I'm not sure how to trust again. Every time you get a phone call, I'm going to wonder if it's him or if there's some other lie." She swallowed, tears tracking down her cheeks. "I know. Trust isn't going to come back overnight, if it ever does. But I'm willing to work for it." Silence thickened between us. Finally, I said, "Let's try counseling. If you're serious, we can go together. But you have to understand, I'm not promising anything. I don't want to walk away without at least trying to see if we can salvage this." She nodded again, stepping forward tentatively. "I understand," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me a chance." When she tried to hug me, I stiffened, but after a moment, I allowed a brief, tense embrace. My emotions were too tangled for comfort, but part of me wanted to feel her warmth, to remember what it was like before all this. The memory of her in another man's arms gnawed at me, though. I couldn't close my eyes without picturing it. Over the following weeks, we initiated a painful, awkward dance toward possible healing. Sarah contacted her supervisor, citing personal reasons to request a transfer. Her boss was sympathetic, and within a few days, she was moved to a different division, with no overlap with James. She also blocked him on her phone and social media, at least, she showed me that she did. I was suspicious, but it was a start. She insisted she had no desire to keep him in her life. I almost believed her, but trust was a fragile, distant thing now. We started therapy with a counselor who specialized in marital issues. Our first session was gut-wrenching. We sat in a small office with muted colors, boxes of tissues on the side table, and I found myself trembling as I described how I learned of her betrayal. Sarah cried openly, apologizing, trying to explain how her emotional exhaustion and misguided connection with James led to that terrible mistake. The counselor guided us gently, urging honesty over defensiveness. When asked if I wanted to salvage the marriage, I hesitated, tears burning my eyes, and said, "I don't know." It was the truth. My love for Sarah hadn't vanished, but it was deeply wounded. Each session forced us to dig deeper, to express the raw feelings we'd been bottling up. I discovered that Sarah had felt neglected in ways I never realized. She'd tried to tell me about her emotional burdens at work, but she felt I was too busy or too distracted to truly listen. I explained that while my job was demanding, I never intended to ignore her needs, and it pained me that she didn't come to me more assertively. The counselor helped us see how unmet emotional needs and poor communication had set the stage for vulnerabilities. But none of that excused her infidelity, and she acknowledged that over and over. Still, seeing the factors that led us here was a step toward making sense of the chaos. Meanwhile, living under the same roof felt like walking through a minefield of triggers. A random love song on the radio could stir my anger. The smell of her perfume, once comforting, sometimes made me nauseous because I wondered if she wore it for him. Physical intimacy was out of the question for a while. I couldn't handle the idea of being close when images of her betrayal kept intruding. Sarah respected my boundaries, though it clearly broke her heart. She'd watch me from across the room, eyes filled with regret. We tried to resurrect small routines, watching a show together, cooking a meal side by side. Sometimes it felt almost normal, reminding me of better times. Then a wave of sorrow or suspicion would crash in, and we'd both freeze. On more than one occasion, I left the house to drive aimlessly, needing to escape the claustrophobia of shattered trust. Each time, she'd text me, not to demand my return, but to say she understood, that she loved me, that she was there if I wanted to talk. Her consistency in these gestures, backing her words with actions, slowly chipped away at the icy wall around my heart. Counseling sessions revealed that, despite the pain, I still loved her. That love warred with fury and betrayal, making me uncertain. But as Sarah took more steps to demonstrate her commitment, like showing me her phone logs, or letting me know her schedule in detail, I saw that she truly wanted to rebuild. She was bearing herself, risking my anger, all to prove she had nothing else to hide. Gradually, my stance softened. Not that forgiveness was immediate, it wasn't. But I began allowing the possibility that we could move forward. Months went by in this painstaking process. We continued therapy. We talked openly about how her mistake devastated me, how it also shook her sense of self. She confessed that the guilt nearly consumed her, and she sometimes felt unworthy of my forgiveness. I confessed that I was terrified of always looking over my shoulder, of never trusting her fully again. The counselor validated both fears, telling us that healing from infidelity is one of the hardest journeys a couple can face. She urged us to keep the lines of communication open, even if it meant weekly sessions, daily check-ins, and an honesty so stark it felt uncomfortable. The turning point came when she showed me a letter she had written, part of an exercise from therapy. In it, she detailed how she never stopped loving me, how her actions were born from a deep well of insecurity and stress, not from a lack of feelings for me. She described the guilt that haunted her every moment since that night with James, how she dreaded me finding out not just because I'd be angry, but because she couldn't stand the thought of hurting me. She wrote about how, even if I chose to leave her, she wanted me to know she took full responsibility for her choices. Tears blurred my vision as I read it. The raw sincerity struck a chord, and for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild something out of this wreckage. Eventually, we began tentatively rediscovering physical closeness. It was awkward and laden with emotional baggage at first. Sometimes we'd try to embrace, and I'd pull away, images of betrayal flaring in my mind. Other times, we'd manage a gentle kiss, and I'd remember the warmth that once defined our relationship. Over time, with continued therapy and her unwavering effort to reassure me, a fragile intimacy grew. We started having deeper conversations about what we wanted from our future, whether we still planned to buy that lake cabin one day, whether kids were still on the table. It felt surreal to talk about a future when we were still healing from the past, but it also felt necessary, like planting seeds of something new. As months turned into nearly a year, I found my anger had dulled to a lingering scar. The raw edges weren't as sharp. I'd never forget what happened. It reshaped our marriage in a fundamental way, teaching us both harsh lessons about honesty, communication, and the fragility of trust. Yet we discovered that, despite the darkness, we still had love. We still wanted to make a life together, battered though it might be. I remember the day we finally spoke about that late-night call that I overheard, the call that set this unraveling in motion. It was during a quiet evening in our living room. The lamp's soft glow cast gentle shadows on the walls. I asked her about the words she said, about how she couldn't keep lying, how it was breaking her. She took a breath, eyes filled with sorrow. "I meant every word," she said. "I hated myself for betraying you. Every time you looked at me with love, I felt like a fraud. That's why I eventually realized I had to end it. I just didn't know how to tell you the truth. I was terrified you'd leave me on the spot." I thought about it, reflecting on how close we came to that outcome. "I might have," I admitted. "Honestly, I still have days where I wonder if I should have. But here we are." She nodded, tears brimming. "I'm so grateful you stayed. I know I can't erase what I did, but I promise I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of your love." I studied her face, seeing both the woman I fell in love with and the woman who betrayed me. Yet they were one and the same, a flawed human being capable of mistakes, regret, and real change. "I want to believe in us," I said quietly. "I can't promise the pain will vanish, but I'm learning to live with it, to move forward. And I see how hard you've worked to restore my faith." She reached for my hand. This time, I let our fingers intertwine, feeling a tentative warmth. "I'll never take your trust for granted again." That night, for the first time in months, we fell asleep holding each other, tears drying on our cheeks. It wasn't a fairy tale resolution, healing isn't that neat. But it felt like a milestone, a moment where we acknowledged that our love was still strong enough to endure the heartbreak. In the weeks that followed, we continued therapy less frequently, feeling more stable. We talked about boundaries and ways to stay vigilant, ensuring we communicated openly, no matter how uncomfortable. We kept each other updated about our schedules, not because we wanted to police each other, but because we realized how easily secrets could bloom in the dark. Our counselor urged us to keep focusing on building positive experiences together, a night out at a new restaurant, a weekend getaway to a quiet bed and breakfast. Those moments helped us remember why we chose each other in the first place. Now, more than a year after that fateful late-night call, we stand on new ground. Our marriage is different than it was before, more cautious, more aware of how easily things can break. But it's also deeper in some ways. We've had conversations about our emotional needs that we never bothered to have in the simpler early days. We've discovered the importance of never taking each other for granted. Does it still hurt sometimes? Yes. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. Certain triggers can bring back a wave of pain, a coworker's joke about cheating, or a scene in a movie that hits too close to home. But we handle it differently now, by talking through it, by reassuring one another that we're in this together. Sarah still struggles with guilt, and I still wrestle with lingering resentment. But we're working through it, day by day, choosing each other anew. If there's one thing I learned from overhearing her call, it's that secrets erode the very core of a relationship. I would never advocate for eavesdropping as a normal approach, but in that moment, overhearing her late-night call was the alarm bell that forced us to confront the truth. It shattered me to hear how she confessed her guilt and her fear, but it also forced the lies into the open. Without that, who knows how long we'd have continued in a painful charade. In a painful twist, that moment of heartbreak, her tearful words in the darkness, ultimately became the turning point that allowed us to address our problems head-on. It set us on a harrowing path, but at least it was honest. Sometimes the only way forward is to tear down the illusions and see what remains. In our case, what remained was a frail but undeniable bond that neither of us was ready to discard. Rebuilding it took immense effort, countless tears, and a willingness to face the worst in each other and ourselves. But as we stand here now, hand in hand, we can say that, despite everything, we found a path through the wreckage. Our story isn't a neat, happy ending, it's an ongoing journey. There will always be a scar where her betrayal cut deep, a memory of that night's revelation that shook the foundations of our marriage. But the fact that we're still here, choosing to love each other despite it all, proves that sometimes, heartbreak can lead to a rebirth stronger than what was before. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that we face it together, eyes open, hearts humble, and determined not to repeat the mistakes that almost tore us apart. If that's not hope, I'm not sure what is.